No matter how hard we try, we will never find ourselves in perfect harmony with others. So Jesus gives us some common sense advice when tensions rise. Stop and talk it out. Now, what could be simpler? And yet we do not do it. Rather, we withdraw and express our feelings of hurt and anger in unhealthy ways. St. Paul wrote, "Be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun set on your anger, and do not leave room for the devil." Why? Because we will resort to complaining, gossiping, passive aggression, or posting on social media. Jesus recommended correcting someone on their path to holiness, out of love and humility. But is it our place to do so? In the first reading, God asked the prophet Ezekiel to be a watchman for Israel. Biblical watchmen were not concerned with guarding property, but guarding people. Their job was to look out for invading armies or robbers that wanted to kidnap. God asked Ezekiel to guard people who began to stray from the faith and call them back. By virtue of our baptisms, we are watchmen also. For the book of Proverbs says, "A brother helped by his brother is like a strong city." Often we hear it is not our place to judge, but Jesus corrected his disciples' behavior. On one occasion he rebuked his disciples for being jealous that another cast out a demon in Jesus' name. He strongly corrected Peter and called him Satan for blocking his path to the cross. And he scolded James and John for being ambitious about power and prestige in the kingdom of heaven. Even St. Augustine taught, we must correct out of love, not out of a desire to hurt. You do worse by keeping silent than he does by sinning. Correcting someone on the wrong path is called fraternal correction. Jesus laid out 4 steps in our gospel. First, go directly to the person to preserve their reputation. Then clearly and objectively state the problem in the context of love, because we want the best for the other. Second, if that doesn't work, find 1 or 2 others that have observed this to show that it is an objective problem that must be dealt with. On the flip side, if no one else has experienced this, perhaps it is a petty thing to let go of. Third, if that doesn't work, then refer the dispute to the church or someone in a role of shepherding them. This demonstrates that a person with authority believes that this is a real issue. Fourth, if they still refuse, then treat them like a Gentile or tax collector. In other words, they have stepped outside the believing community, but never stop making invitations. Before practicing fraternal correction, we must pray, discern the opportune time and appropriate words, and always avoid humiliating someone. St. Jose Maria Escriva said, "The person giving the correction should strike like an iron fist inside a velvet glove." In other words, be firm about the seriousness of the matter, but practice humility and compassion. In prayer, we must consider our own unworthiness. What fault have we in the matter? And whether we have been guilty of this in the past, or could see ourselves fall to it. Jesus reminds us that it is easier to notice a splinter in another's eye than to see the board in our own eye. Fraternal correction always involves mercy, which means to enter into another's misery and work to relieve it. Who feels more misery than a lost sheep, wandering in sin and anger? Fraternal correction involves the same mercy that Jesus exercised towards those who, according to human estimation, least deserved it. Mary Magdalene, the Samaritan woman at the well, Peter, Zacchaeus, and even Judas. If we cannot approach others who need fraternal correction out of love and mercy, then we ought to say nothing at all. We should only confront someone to the measure that we are willing to commit to helping correct the problem. If all we do is complain and then write the person off, it shows that we do not care about belonging to the body of Christ. Ultimately, we find our deepest identity not in ourselves, but in communion with God and others. When our community splinters, It weakens our power to make Christ visible. If we are receiving fraternal correction, do so with gratitude, without arguing or excuse, and with the perspective that this may be coming from God. Then bring it to prayer, and a trusted friend, spiritual director, or priest. Others must help us attain our goal of salvation through correction, because we cannot see ourselves objectively. If we find our feathers ruffled, remember, St. Cyril said, reproof makes the humble improve, but seems unbearable to the proud. As watchmen, we bear the cross of accountability. It is never easy to hold others accountable, especially our peers and family members. For St. Thomas Becket said, "Watch my behavior carefully, and warn me of my faults, because 4 eyes can see better than 2."